Year 2. No end in sight. Streaming now.
Well, hello and a very warm welcome. Thanks for tuning in to News 9 Live. I'm Kabir Naqvi and we're bringing you this special broadcast even as Gazans are fleeing the northern part of the Strip, as Gazan aid is now waiting on the Rafah border, but the humanitarian crisis that has certainly deepened. Desperation amidst darkness. That is going to be our focus over the next couple of minutes, bringing you stories from Gaza, bringing you stories from Israel, what's happening inside Gaza, how is the global community divided right now between the pro-Palestinian and the pro-Israeli protests, and lastly, we have our own boots on the ground, ladies and gentlemen. Our colleagues are placed in different locations in Israel, bringing you the actual and true reports from war zone Israel, but bringing you the latest developments. First and foremost, it has been 9 days, ladies and gentlemen, since an unprecedented attack that was initiated by the Hamas terrorists on the residents of southern Israel following their firing of thousands of rockets into the Israeli territory. We're bringing you visuals of the constant bombardment of the Gaza Strip. Now, that particular unprecedented attack that took place on the 7th of October has ignited this unprovoked war. In response, Israel has undertaken numerous counteroffensives in Gaza, where many Hamas terrorists, and you can take a look at those black and white thermal imaging visuals as well, of exactly the locations, the pinpoint precision and accuracy with which what at least the Israeli Defense Forces are claiming at this point in time is that they are targeting the Hamas terror hubs, those particular venues and locations where Hamas operatives were stationed. Only yesterday we learned about key operatives of the Hamas terror organization that were killed in these airstrikes, even as Ali Kachi and of course Murad Abu Murad, who's the aerial commander of the aerial offense that Hamas carried out. 5,000 rockets, let's not forget, on the 7th of October that launched from the Gaza Strip towards Israel. Many landed in Ashkelon, many in Ashdod. Some even said made their way towards near Tel Aviv as well. The Iron Dome has been working ever so constantly, but day 9, this is the latest detail. The death toll is currently over 3,500, ladies and gentlemen, even as more than 10,000 people are wounded on both sides of the divide. Israel is preparing to invade Gaza. We'll bring you ground reports where we're speaking to IDF soldiers as well. Meanwhile, United States, the United Kingdom has advised its citizens in the Gaza Strip to move closer to the Rafah border. Now, the Rafah border is towards the southern tip of the Gaza Strip, which currently is closed. There's a lot of aid that is waiting for the Gazans at the Rafah border on the other side at the Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. The United States is moving its second aircraft carrier to the eastern Mediterranean as well, even as Joe Biden calls Netanyahu and Palestinian President Abbas. Joe Biden has already come out in support of Israel. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the USS Hunter, the USS Roosevelt, all moving towards the eastern Mediterranean as a deterrent. This, even as Israel has issued warning across the Gaza Strip, especially for northern Gazans, to move towards the south so that the next stage of the operation can begin at the hands of the IDF. IDF spokespersons are also going to be on the show. We'll bring you the right kind of statements as to what this next stage is going to be for the Israeli Defense Forces, even as humanitarian crisis deepens. There is shortage of fuel, there is shortage of food, there is shortage of energy, and now it seems like there is shortage of faith and hope as well. Both sides have suffered casualties. The death toll in the Israel-Hamas war stands at about nearly 4,000, ladies and gentlemen. These are reports that Israel is preparing a ground invasion in the northern part of Gaza, which includes the Gaza city itself. Now, Israel has asked around 1.1 million people to evacuate from northern Gaza and go towards the southern part of the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, US and UK have asked their citizens to get closer to the Rafah border so that they can escape and be evacuated from the Gaza Strip. Egypt, when it will allow people to cross over, is going to be a significant time. There's a lot of people that are waiting near the Gaza border, the Rafah border at the Gaza Strip, and we'll tell you all about that as well, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this is the first information that we like to bring to you. And why it's important is because the airstrikes are continuing and they're constantly hitting terror targets, these Hamas targets. Now, over the course of the day, the IDF continued to strike Hamas military targets in the Gaza Strip. This includes Jabalia, Zaytun, Al Furqan, and Beit Hanun. These are the areas where the airstrikes and the bombardment continues unabated. The targets that were struck include terror operatives, operational command centers, and dozens of mortar shell launchers that were pointed and very precisely targeted by the Israeli Defense Forces. During the evening hours yesterday, an IDF fighter jet also located a building containing a number of terrorists and killed the entire terrorist squad as well. You're looking at all those visuals of the black and white thermal imaging, buildings completely dilapidated. On the other hand, Palestinians and Gazans collectively saying that the safe areas, the safe routes that were declared by the Israeli Defense Forces were not spared either. People who were leaving, non-combatants, civilians, with their children, with their mattresses, with all their belongings, they were attacked, hit by the shelling as well. Additionally, during the afternoon, the IDF identified a number of Hamas operatives exiting a terror tunnel, in the Gaza Strip, and the IDF aircraft killed the terrorists right then and there and struck the terror tunnel that they exited as well, blocking it completely. The terror tunnel network and nexus is also an interesting factor in this Israel-Gaza war, ladies and gentlemen. Meanwhile, the IDF continues to target Hamas terrorist organization operatives and degrade their capabilities as well. Meanwhile, even as all of this is happening, it's important to note that residents of Khan Yunis, a prime and popular place in the Gaza Strip, searched through the rubble of a building that was destroyed by an Israeli airstrikes on Saturday as hopes diminished to find survivors.
It was an extremely strong explosion. We were surprised as we were asleep, my children, wife and I. When we woke up, we saw that my home and my brother's house were damaged, while the neighbours' houses had collapsed. We rushed to where the strike hit, and were surprised to see that a 3-story building had collapsed, and there were martyrs under the rubble. We called the medics and bulldozers to remove the rubble. Martyrs are stuck under the rubble, and until now, neither us, nor the medics, nor the civil defence are able to take them out.
Well, you just saw those visuals, didn't you? Dilapidated buildings, completely looking like an apocalyptic ruin. For those Gazans, the non-combatants, the civilians that are dealing and reeling with the effects of the war zone, new aid flights have arrived in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula yesterday, where relief materials are being held until safe passage for their delivery into the nearby Gaza Strip can be secured. This coming across from an official from the Red Crescent and an aid volunteer who was present at the site. Take a look at the expanse and the lengthy line of the trucks that are full of aid materials and relief material for all the Gazans and all the people that are displaced. It is being estimated that millions are going to be displaced because of the ongoing Israel-Gaza conflict. Now, Egypt says its side of the Rafah crossing that connects Sinai with the Gaza Strip remains open, though traffic has been halted for several days because of Israeli bombardments on the Palestinian side of the border. Egyptian security forces have been reinforcing security on their side of the border, including by moving concrete barriers, but reports are out there in the open that they were sealing off the crossing, and that report the Egyptian authorities have come out and said is actually incorrect. One Egyptian security source has said, speaking on the condition of anonymity, that no, that's actually not true. We are not barricading the borders. The crossing, the Rafah border, is the main exit point for the Gaza Strip's 2.3 million residents. Many consider Gaza Strip to be an open-air prison. The 2.3 million residents that is not controlled by Israel, Rafah border seems to be the only exit point. Israel and Egypt have upheld a blockade on the enclave, tightly controlling movement of goods and people since Palestinian Islamist group Hamas took control there in 2007. The Israeli military spokesperson said on Saturday that the border remains closed and any crossing to Egypt needed to be coordinated with the authorities in Israel. Now, 2 aid flights, including one from Turkey, arrived at Ai Arish, about 45 kilometers from the Gaza border, bringing the total number of planes that have arrived this week carrying humanitarian relief for Gaza to at least 5. And just like I promised, we have placed our boots on the ground. My colleague Manish Jha is on the ground in Israel and getting us these voices from the Israeli Defense Forces. One of them even on the lighter note said that he's going to visit India real soon.
इस वक्त TV9 के कैमरे पर आप देखिए कि मार्क 4 टैंक में जो टैंक के सेल को टैंकिस्ट प्लेस कर रहे हैं उसको आप देखिए कि कितना बड़ा सेल है। तो आप सोचिए कि एक तरफ से जहां हमास के रॉकेट के हमले हो रहे हैं वहीं दूसरी तरफ जो मार्क 4 टैंक के सेल से उसका जवाब दिया जाएगा और बीच बीच में जो धमाके की आवाज़ यहाँ पर बॉर्डर पर सुनाई देती है, फ्रंट लाइन पर सुनाई देती है, वहीं ठीक दूसरी तरफ देखिए अमित, दूसरी तरफ आप दिखाइए बहुत सारे जो टैंकमैन हैं वो एक एक सेल को लेकर जा रहे हैं और उसको अपने अपने टैंकों में। तो देखिए कभी भी शुरू हो सकता है ये ऑपरेशन। कुछ घंटे के बाद हमास पर को नेस्तनाबूद करने के लिए ये ऑपरेशन जो होगा उसके लिए देखिए अभी किस तरीके से इस टैंक में जो टैंकिस्ट हैं वो सेल को प्लेस कर रहे हैं ताकि एक साथ अटैक किया जा सकता है। आज की रात भारी पड़ सकती है हमास पर, आज की रात गाजा पट्टी पर भारी होगी। उसका सबसे बड़ा सबूत यही है कि सोल्जर अपने हिसाब से तैयारी करके उन्होंने रख लिया है, बस एक सिग्नल का इंतज़ार है। जैसे ही वो सिग्नल मिलेगा और ये कूच कर पड़ेंगे गाजा पट्टी में दुनिया के सबसे खतरनाक ऑपरेशन को अंजाम देने के लिए, जिसके बाद जैसा कि IDF का कहना है कि फिर 100 साल तक कोई भी इजराइल की सरजमी पर आक्रमण करने का हिम्मत नहीं जुटा पाएगा। यहाँ पर हम आपको उन सोल्जर्स को भी दिखाएंगे, उनसे बात भी करेंगे और उनसे जानने की कोशिश करेंगे कि ग्राउंड ऑपरेशन करने से पहले वो क्या सोच रहे हैं। तो चलिए सबसे पहले मुलाकात करते हैं, बात करते हैं इसमें। हाय, दिस इज मनीष झा, आई एम फ्रॉम इंडिया।
Hi, Gabriel.
So Gabriel, you are here and any moment you can go for war. So before coming here, what you were doing?
Before coming here, I was working in an accountant's office, and I was doing some accounting.
So basically, you are an accountant, and then when your country called you, then you are here.
Yes, that's very correct.
Hi sir, what's your good name?
Micha.
Micha. And before coming here, what you were doing?
I'm school teacher. I teach.
School teacher.
Yes, I teach civic studies and mathematics to the 10th grade.
And now you are having weapon.
I'm having a weapon because that's what my country needs. I hear the call and I have to come here. Not something that I really want to do, but something that I have to do.
You know, I was in Russia last year. I saw lots of Russian citizens were leaving the country. But when I was coming to Israel, I saw lots of Israeli persons were coming back to to Israel. So do you think that this is the specialty of all Israelis? Whenever your country needs you, you are here?
Yes, as we see by the statistics, reserve soldiers are being 150% of reserve soldiers arrived. For myself, I didn't even receive a formal invitation to come here. When I saw the situation on Saturday, I took my uniform, took my bag, packed it, and although we don't have public transportation on Saturday, I asked my father to take me right down here.
Oh my God! So normally, how much time you get when you call for the duty?
It really depends. It varies. We were called up straight away. I was called up straight away, but it depends on people and it depends on the situation.
So both of you have a first experience to come at the ground zero, like Operation Zone.
Again, I'm sorry.
My question is that both of you have a first experience to to do duty at Operation Zone?
Well, I didn't take any part on any formal operation. We served in the regular forces, you know, all the only the Batash.
Daily operational
Daily
duty.
operational defense missions. Yeah, that's what we did.
My question is, before coming to war zone, what was your job? Like what you were doing?
My job is to prepare now for the next step. I don't know what we're going to do. I can't talk about it.
Yeah.
But we are prepared, like you see, and that's all. Israel going to win this war. Okay. All the terror going to.
Okay, and you were saying me that you have some connection with India. So please tell us, what is your connection with India?
What? I didn't.
The
understand.
India link. What is your connection with India?
My father, born in India.
Uh-huh.
I don't remember which city, but he's born in India, and you know, I have a big connection to India.
Oh, great. So have you visited India?
Not because I'm here, but after I'm
After
get
war,
out,
you will visit India.
Yeah, I will visit, and maybe we see on a cup of coffee one
Oh,
day.
great. Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm just asking, so when you got information that you have to come here, so what was your reaction, your family's reaction?
So we don't have to come here because we are instructors, we are not combat soldiers. But when everything started, of course we wanted to come and help. And our families are worried, I think everyone is worried. But we know we have to do this, we have to help. So we are here.
Well, meanwhile, even as Gazans are fleeing and the death toll is mounting, and I have with me the latest figures for you, ladies and gentlemen, the death toll in the Gaza Strip has now climbed to 2,329 Palestinians and nearly 10,000 Palestinians that it injured, accounting by the Palestinian officials on Sunday morning. Meanwhile, the Jerusalem Post has reported on their particular website that Iran has sent a private message via the United Nations to Israel that if their bombing and their military offensive on the Gaza Strip does not stop, well, then Iran will invade and interfere. And if Iran interferes, that means the United States' USS Gerald R. Ford, the USS Hunter, the USS Roosevelt, the USS Normandy, the entire frigate, the F-16s, 35s, A-10s, you name it, everything that has been stationed in the Eastern Mediterranean as a deterrent will then become active. Already people inside the Gaza Strip are asking for all the Arab nations to come together and raise their voice against the offensive by Israel. Now, Iran, it seems, has sent a private message to Israel, according to the Jerusalem Post. Meanwhile, even as all of this is happening, thousands of Palestinians are continuously fleeing the north of Gaza Strip. Again today, we got visuals of people that are still moving towards the southern part. Even as that deadline has ceased, that deadline is now over, and the next stage of the Israeli offensive is on the cards. From the path of the expected Israeli ground assault, while Israel is continuously pounding the area with more airstrikes, people are continuously moving, the death toll is rising, and it is being said that only 2 roads were kept open to let people escape. However, even those roads ended up being hit. Take a look.
As explosions were seen on the Gaza City skyline Saturday, the Israeli military said its forces were preparing to implement a wide range of operational offensive plans with, quote, an emphasis on significant ground operations. Thousands of Palestinians continue to flee the northern Gaza Strip ahead of an expected Israeli ground assault, while Israel said it kept 2 roads open to let people escape. Outside Gaza, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was seen in a government press office video visiting troops and telling them to be ready for the next stage without elaborating. Reuters video showed paramedics and rescue teams operating in an area of northern Gaza, which was hit by an airstrike, forcing them to scramble away quickly. Israel has bombarded the Hamas-run Gaza Strip with unprecedented airstrikes after Hamas fighters stormed through Israeli towns a week ago, gunning down civilians and taking scores of hostages. Some 1,300 people were killed in Israel. More than 2,200 people have been killed in Gaza, according to authorities there. But Israel's attacks on Gaza failed to halt Hamas missile strikes deep into Israeli cities. On Saturday, rockets smashed into a greenhouse in Ashkelon and wounded 4 people at a kibbutz. Back in Gaza, crowds of foreigners hoping to escape waited at the Rafah border crossing with Egypt. Egypt said its side is open, but traffic has been halted for days because of Israeli strikes. This young British girl said she is desperate to leave.
I'm really in fear, and every time I just have to have the thought of me dying in a bomb in Gaza. It's not a good thing, but it's a really scary thing for me.
A senior U.S. State Department official said the United States was working to open the crossing on Saturday to let some people out and had been in touch with Palestinian Americans who want to leave Gaza.
Meanwhile, even as people are dealing with their belongings or the lack of it near the Rafah border, Israeli infantry made their first raids into the Gaza Strip on the intervening night of Friday and Saturday since Hamas terrorists rampaged through southern Israel. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had said that the campaign of retaliation had only just begun.
אנחנו הולמים באויבינו בעוצמה חסרת תקדים.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel was, quote, striking at our enemies with unprecedented might on Friday, and emphasized that, quote, this is just the beginning. Israeli infantry made their first raids into the Gaza Strip Friday and vowed to annihilate Hamas after its fighters stormed through towns and villages in southern Israel last week, killing 1,300 Israelis, mainly civilians, and making off with scores of hostages. Netanyahu added, our enemies have only begun paying the price, and I won't detail what is yet to come. So far, troops backed by tanks have mounted raids to attack Palestinian rocket crews and sought information about the location of hostages, according to an Israeli military spokesperson. This follows airstrikes that Gaza authorities say killed nearly 2,000 people. On Friday, Israel gave more than 1 million residents of the northern half of Gaza 24 hours to flee to the south to avoid an onslaught. Hamas vowed to fight to the last drop of blood and told residents to stay.
The situation in Gaza has reached a dangerous new low.
Meanwhile, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned of a disaster if so many people were forced to flee, and said the siege of the enclave should be lifted to let in aid.
We need immediate humanitarian access throughout Gaza so that we can get fuel, food and water to everyone in need. Even wars have rules.
Earlier, a UN spokesperson said it would be impossible for Gazans to obey Israel's relocation order without devastating humanitarian consequences. Israel responded that the UN should condemn Hamas and support Israel's right to self-defense. Tens of thousands are estimated to have fled south in Gaza after the notice to evacuate, the UN said Friday. Gaza authorities said 70 people were killed and 200 were wounded when Israel struck cars and trucks carrying people fleeing. Reuters could not independently verify the reported incident.
Well, now several thousand Gaza residents could be seen on roads heading out of the northern part of the Gaza Strip after Israel ordered more than 1 million people to leave just within a span of 24 hours. Watch this Reuters report for more.
Carrying mattresses and personal belongings, residents of Gaza City were seen walking south on Friday after Israel ordered more than 1 million people to leave the northern half of the Gaza Strip within 24 hours. Israel said troops backed by tanks had carried out raids inside the Gaza Strip Friday. That was its first announcement of a shift from an air war to ground operations in order to root out Hamas fighters a week after their deadly rampage in southern Israel. Hamas, which controls the densely populated area, told Gaza residents to stay put despite Israel's deadline. Mosques broadcast the message, "Hold on to your homes, hold on to your land." While many residents said they would not go, several thousand people could be seen on roads heading out of the northern part of the Gaza Strip, but it was impossible to tell their exact numbers. The United Nations said Israel's call for Gaza civilians, over 1 million of them, to leave was impossible to carry out, quote, without devastating humanitarian consequences. Here's UN spokesman Rolando Gomez.
The United Nations strongly appeals for any such order to be rescinded, avoiding what could transform what is already a tragic situation into a calamitous situation.
Israel rebuked the UN statement, saying it should condemn Hamas and support Israel's right to self-defense. Since Hamas fighters burst across the barrier fence and killed 1,300 Israelis on Saturday, Israel has responded with the most intensive airstrikes of its 75-year conflict with the Palestinians. Gaza authorities say 1,800 people have been killed. The United Nations says 400,000 people have already been made homeless.
Well, meanwhile, as part of the bombings, it's again important to tell you that journalists also have to make a lot of sacrifices. When talking about embedding journalism or bringing you true reports and stories from these conflict zones. The Reuters video journalist Issam Abdullah was killed, even as 6 others were injured in southern Lebanon on Friday when missiles fired from the direction of Israel struck them. The Israeli army says that it is investigating the death of the Reuters journalist, even as the global community is now reacting to it, and there's a lot of furor around the death of the videographer.
The Israeli army said on Saturday that it was investigating an incident in southern Lebanon in which a Reuters journalist was killed and 6 others injured. A military spokesman said the death of Issam Abdullah was, quote, a tragic thing. A Reuters videographer who was at the scene on Friday said missiles fired from the direction of Israel struck the group. Alongside journalists from Al Jazeera and AFP, the Reuters team was providing a live video signal for broadcasters near Alma al-Shab, close to the Israel border, where the Israeli military and Lebanese militia Hezbollah have been trading fire in border clashes. While other news outlets, including the Associated Press and Al Jazeera, said the missiles which killed Issam Abdullah were Israeli, Reuters could not establish whether they were fired by Israel. Israel's UN envoy Gilad Erdan spoke to reporters at a briefing on Friday.
Obviously, we would never want to hit or kill or shoot any journalist that is doing his job. But, we're in a state of war. Things might happen.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the incident underlines the danger of the conflict spreading and the risks to reporters.
I want to say how much this demonstrates the enormous risk of spillover of this conflict, namely in relation to Lebanon. And I want to pay tribute to the journalists that so many, unfortunately, the largest number ever last year, so many journalists are paying with their lives the work they do to bring truth to everybody in the world. That I present to their families my deepest condolences.
2 other Reuters journalists, Te'er al-Sudani and Meher Nazir, who were wounded in the incident, were released from a hospital after receiving medical care.
Our hearts and prayers with the loved ones of the killed journalist, and we wish a speedy recovery to all those that are currently under treatment. But today morning, ladies and gentlemen, explosions and black smoke were seen again on the Gaza skyline. Gunfire was also heard near the northeastern border of the Gaza Strip. Israeli troops prepared on Sunday for a ground assault on the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip as the country hit back for the unprecedented assault on its territory on the 7th of October. Now Israel has vowed to annihilate the terrorist group Hamas, and for the 9th day, the constant bombardment of various parts of the Gaza Strip and the constant picture of smoke billowing on the Gaza skyline continues. So a lot of allegations that have been leveled by the Palestinians. Number one, they said that only 2 roads were open for the evacuation when Israeli authorities had given them a deadline of moving into the southern part of the Gaza Strip. Now the IDF spokesperson, listening to what they had to say, because he's actually coming out and saying that they did not attack civilians, and it's actually the Hamas that is asking people to not leave Gaza.
I'd like to focus on the current situation. During the night, there were rockets fired at Tel Aviv and southern Israel. There is still combat in and around the northern part of the Gaza Strip, and the IDF continues to operate above the Gaza Strip and to attack different military targets belonging to Hamas. Now, we have called on the civilian population, and this isn't news, we have called on the civilian population in Gaza City and the northern part of the Gaza Strip to evacuate south of the Gaza River. And that isn't news. But what is news is that Hamas has both issued warnings to their civilians not to evacuate, and when people didn't listen to those warnings of Hamas, they have actually stopped civilians and they have stopped convoys of Gazan civilians trying to flee from the situation and listening to our warnings, knowing that they are much better off south of the Gaza River than staying in the northern part. There's a picture here on this side where you can see an aerial footage of 2 vehicles, these 2 vehicles here. That's a zoom in, and this is the same 2 vehicles, and you can see the line of civilian vehicles trying to go from north to south, being blocked by 2 other vehicles. And that corresponds with intelligence and information we have from various sources that Hamas is indeed actively preventing civilians from leaving the south. Now, if that isn't the most sinister and vile use of civilians during war, I don't know what is, but it again goes to show the lack of any value for human life with the terrorist organization Hamas. Now, there have been reports of a convoy or vehicles of Gazans that were going from of people killed, if they were armed people or not, if they were men or women or children. Obviously, that information is authorized by Hamas, and it's okay for release by Hamas, and it would serve the purposes of Hamas. So when you get information, if you're a journalist or if you're just listening to what's going on, and you get information from the Gaza Strip, please be very, very skeptical of the veracity and ask yourself, why was this information disseminated and how does it serve Hamas and its propaganda purposes? And I'd like to show you something. This is footage made by local Gazans of that incident. And you see the explosion there? We're going to zoom in. You know what? We're going to show it again, just so you can see it better. Vehicles traveling, some guy is filming, and then all of a sudden, a big explosion. Now, you can't see it now, but we've zoomed in. Actually, we haven't. People who know how to do it around the world, forensic analysis and other people, visual imagery experts, they've zoomed in and they've enlarged the area of the explosion. That's one of those pictures. And here's another picture, a little bit zoomed out, of the same very incident. They've basically isolated the frames and looked and wanted to understand where the explosion started and what it looks like. Now, I'm no forensic expert. I wouldn't be able to say if this is a roadside IED or if this is a strike from above. But what I am able to say with confidence, because we have asked, is that the IDF did not purposely strike in that area. There was no targeting of vehicles, there was no targeting of civilians, specifically because we want we don't target civilians anyhow, but specifically because we wanted people to go south. So it makes no sense for the IDF.
But now, even as the IDF is now, answering and reverting to all those allegations, the leader of the Palestinian Islamist Hamas group said in a video that was released yesterday that Palestinians will not leave Gaza or the West Bank to migrate to Egypt. Ismail Haniyeh made the statement from an unknown location via televised address.
There will be no migrating from Gaza, no migrating from the West Bank, no migrating from Gaza to Egypt. And here, I would also like to salute the stance of our siblings in Egypt and who maintains that Egypt is indeed a country and is our sibling and a refuge and is welcoming to the Palestinian people, but not on the grounds of migration or displacement. And neither of us can ever accept that. And I say to my siblings in Egypt, our decision is to stay in our country, so your decision is our decision. And standing in the face of the Zionist plan that is supported by the American administration, we will make it fail, God willing. I highly appreciate, in the name of Palestinian people, these rallies and these flooding of masses, and I call it for it to continue.
Now, even as Gaza residents start moving south, and you're looking at those visuals as well, now Egypt shares a border with Gaza and has been alarmed by the possibility that its residents could be displaced by Israel's siege and bombardment of the territory. Like other Arab states, Egypt has said that Palestinians should stay on their land as the war escalates and that it is working to secure delivery of aid into the Gaza Strip. But at the same time, ladies and gentlemen, at the same time, let's also try and understand and listen in to how the IDF's international spokesperson, Lieutenant Colonel Richard, what he had to say particularly.
The IDF is calling for the people of Gaza to evacuate to southern Gaza for their safety. Israel and Hamas are at war, a war that Hamas started with a brutal massacre. They've continuously attacked Israel every day since. We have a responsibility to protect our people and make sure this thing never happens again. That is why the IDF is operating to eliminate Hamas in Gaza. Our war is not with the people of Gaza. Let me say that again. Our war is not with the people of Gaza. We are calling on the residents of Gaza City to evacuate southwards for their own safety. Not just because it's international law, because it's our values, our morals, and we demand no less. Our warnings are to save Gazan civilians, civilians that Hamas believes are more valuable dead than alive. Hamas has already told civilians in Gaza to ignore the warnings, calling them fake and even stopping them physically from leaving Gaza City. Hamas is responsible for the people of Gaza. The IDF is responsible for defending the people of Israel.
Well, that was the IDF's international spokesperson. Meanwhile, we have fresh drone visuals, drone footage that was taken in a Gaza neighborhood that shows excavators working to constantly remove rubble from a collapsed building in a residential area. Again, the operative part here being a residential area that was struck on Sunday morning. People stood and watched over the work next to the nearby greenhouses that were partially damaged as well. Death, destruction surmounts even as hope diminishes amidst this darkness sort of a situation. Drone footage of a Gaza neighborhood, ladies and gentlemen. This is another attempt of ours to bring you the latest from Gaza and take you inside Gaza. From all those people that are leaving, thousands of cars that were seen moving from Ramallah and Khan Yunis towards the southern part of the Gaza Strip, and now another set of drone visuals that showcases how excavators are constantly moving the debris, the rubble, and you never know, because the search and rescue operations for the loved ones, for the meager hope of finding a survivor, they're still actually on. People are crying, bodies are filling up the mortuaries and the morgues, and people are lining up outside intensive care treatment centers in all the leftover hospitals in the Gaza Strip. And at this juncture, it's important to note that India, under its Operation Ajay, has been able to bring back another batch of Indians. Amid the ongoing Israel-Hamas war, India launched the Operation Ajay to facilitate the return of those who wished to come back home. A fourth flight under Operation Ajay that carried another batch of 274 Indian nationals reached the Delhi airport from Israel this very morning. The Indian nationals were received by Union Minister General V.K. Singh at the Delhi airport. Visuals that you can see handing an Indian flag to each of those being repatriated. A series of attacks on Israeli towns by the Hamas terrorists over the weekend triggered fresh tension in the region. It's the day 9, constant bombardment, evacuations far and plenty, but the humanitarian crisis certainly deepening.
Because I was there for a tourist purpose, and my visa got expired, and on 7th we were supposed to return. However, the flight got cancelled at the last moment, and then we got it rescheduled, and then we come to know about this Operation Ajay, and then we got out from there.
इंडिया ने में कोई डिफिकल्टी नहीं हुई. गवर्नमेंट का जो भी प्रयास है बहुत सराहनीय है.
Israel में Gaza border and towards the Lebanon side, Syria, it's not good at all. It's very I can't even say it. It's so bad.
गवर्नमेंट वहाँ पे मतलब बहुत पूरी मदद है. वहाँ लोगों का पूरा साथ है. लोग आपस में एक दूसरे की मदद कर रहे हैं. बहुत अच्छा मतलब समर्थन है पूरा लोगों का वहाँ पे अपने लिए, अपने एक दूसरे के लिए.
इंडिया आने में कोई डिफिकल्टी नहीं हुई एंड हैट्स ऑफ. मैं बहुत अच्छा सिस्टम है, बहुत अच्छे से इन्होंने मैनेज किया है. इतने सारे स्टूडेंट्स को एक साथ लेके आना, इट्स रियली हैट्स ऑफ. बहुत अच्छा है.
Well, now that those Indians are back home, let's bring you some stories from our domestic politics. Take a look at what former Congress President Sonia Gandhi said on Saturday, asserting that the opposition is going to fight for the immediate implementation of the Women's Reservation Bill that was passed recently by the Parliament. Take a look at what Sonia Gandhi had to say.
Rajiv ji, as we all know, brought in the historic 33% reservation for women in Panchayati Raj and local self-governments. This spurred an entirely new phenomenon of women entering roles of leadership at the grassroots level. It was a vital stepping stone towards the reservation on a similar 1/3 of seats in the Lok Sabha, which the Indian National Congress has pioneered in Parliament and outside. Now, the Women's Reservation Bill has finally been passed due to our relentless persistence, all of us, not just Congress, our relentless persistence and effort. But as we all know, it has still a long way come. And as Mahmoud ji said, and as many of us, Member of Parliament, said in our intervention in Parliament, when is the bill now going to be implemented? In 1 year, in 2 years, in 3 years? We have no idea. I am confident that we, the like-minded parties, of the India Alliance can and will take urgent steps needed to make women's equality a reality. And it is my fervent hope that we, in the India Alliance, will see to it that the bill will be implemented implemented as soon as possible. We will all work together to see to it that it happens.
Well, now that was Sonia Gandhi addressing the DMK Women's Conference. Meanwhile, bringing you another update from Maharashtra, where 12 people were killed and 23 got injured after a fatal accident took place on the Mumbai-Nagpur Samruddhi Super Expressway in Vijayapur. A 6-year-old girl was also killed in this unfortunate accident. The accident occurred after a minibus carrying several passengers rammed into a container truck from the rear in Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar district. Beg your pardon. The private bus was reportedly carrying 35 passengers when it met with the devastating accident. The injured are undergoing treatment in nearby hospitals at the moment. Visuals from Vijayanagar. And with that, it's a wrap on this episode of how Gazans are fleeing even as the death toll is mounting. Latest updates will continue on News 9 Plus vis-a-vis the Israel-Gaza war zone. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Kabir Naqvi signing off. Don't go anywhere.
Hello everyone, Namaskar, I'm music composer Ricky Cage. 3-time Grammy Award winner and a United Nations Goodwill Ambassador. And you're watching me on First Person on News 9 Plus.
This and more streaming now on the world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
There was a metro revolution in the country, immediately, explosion. And today about 20 metros are going on. The government should realize metro is not for business. Metro is a social service. I come from a very middle class family located in Agranam village of Palghat district. I am the youngest of the 8 children in the family, but my father was very particular that all the children should have good education. My eldest brother was an electrical engineer. He was very keen that I should join railway because in those days railway was the best organization for any engineer in the country. It was almost a dream post.